You're listening to the Catholic Wives with Toxic In-Laws podcast. Today's episode is part 2 of an interview I did with Desirae Sifuentes of Uncatechized Catholic. Are you a Catholic wife grappling with challenging in-laws? The Catholic Wives with Toxic In-Laws podcast is your sanctuary for navigating the sometimes stormy seas of life with toxic in-laws while being validated for what you've experienced. Join me, your host, Miriam Susan, a Catholic wife who's weathered 3 decades of in-law drama, as we tackle the tough issues you're dealing with head on. Hi, welcome to today's episode. This is, as I said in the intro, part 2 of an interview that I did with Uncatechized Catholic's Desirae Sifuentes. If you did not listen to the previous episode, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to that so you have some context for what we are talking about. With that being said, let's jump right in to this conversation that I had with Desirae Sifuentes. And something else that I hear a lot of is, but I'm supposed to forgive them. And doesn't that mean that I have to then let these people back into our lives? So can you talk about true forgiveness and what that actually means when you're dealing with toxic people, toxic in-laws or parents? Because I think a lot of Catholic wives believe that forgiving somebody means that these abusers are getting a pass and they have to keep subjecting themselves to this harmful behavior.
Yes. So forgiveness is actually for us, and access is for the repentant. So it's that phrase, if you refusing to forgive is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, right? You don't forgive just because, you deserve forgiveness. No, you forgive because you're letting go of whatever it is that is crinkling you up. You're taking, your paper and smoothing it back out and going, you know what, we're fine. I'm not going to keep being all knotted up about this. I'm going to let it go because I deserve this peace, and I'm not going to let what you have done steal that from me. That said, access comes from people who are repentant. So you can both choose forgiveness and maintain, no, we don't actually get to have a relationship with each other. No, I'm not actually going to come visit you. We'll just talk on the phone. I won't send you pictures of my children, like whatever it is. Unless they are acknowledging that they have done wrong, going back is not loving behavior, it's foolish behavior. Now, much like love, choosing forgiveness is choosing forgiveness. You choose to love your spouse. You don't always feel like you love your spouse. You choose forgiveness. You don't always feel like forgiving. And I can understand that very well with the family member that I cut off. It took a long time for me to recognize, oh yeah, I'm not going to feel like I have forgiven, honestly, because I know they're not sorry. And that was tricky for me to realize, where it's like, yeah, I know that they don't feel like they've done anything wrong. And I know, even though the door is open, like I know that they're not going to come back. Just knowing them and all of their past behavior, like I'm hoping for a miracle, but like I hope for the miracle. I don't actually expect, someday this will happen, And that for a while, after formally making that choice to say this is mutual, there was a lot of resentment there. And it was only when I said, you know what, even though I don't feel like it, I'm just going to lay this down at the foot of the cross. And that's what you have to do. You have to lay it down there. And if you snatch it back up and cling it, back to yourself, you have to lay it back down again. And every single time you pick it up, you keep just choosing to lay it back down, because sometimes we get frustrated, or just sometimes those old emotions come up, and you can start to kind of go in that direction again, but you have to consciously choose to not, right? You have to consciously decide to let things go and to forgive. And it's not necessarily overnight. It takes some time. But the analogy that I like to think about with this the most is, your body is a temple. That's why you have to be worthy of receiving the Eucharist, because Jesus is literally dwelling in your body. And if you have just desecrated the heck out of your temple, Jesus should not be coming in there. But yeah, so your body is a temple. And if you imagine any other temple, if somebody walked into a temple, like somebody was in St. Peter's and they walked in and they started screaming at people, or they started physically hitting people, or they started trying to, manipulate their way up the line or whatever, like they would be kicked out. You can't behave like this in here. You have to leave. And so people who abuse your temple should not be allowed in. It goes back to that stealing your peace thing. If this person is coming in and wreaking havoc, and all of a sudden you can't maintain a holy space in place to have an encounter with the Lord in prayer and the Eucharist and the Mass, whatever, that's a big problem. And you need to make sure that you're weeding that out. And that is less of an emotional choice and more of an executive decision. And that is how we should be looking at these things. This is not, yeah, my feelings may be hurt or I'm uncomfortable or whatever, but this is not a decision to be made emotionally. This is an objectively what is happening here and what needs to be done to rectify any wrong. And that's it.
I love that you said that we won't always feel like we have forgiven them. And when I realized that forgiveness is a choice and it's not a feeling, it was like, oh, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And, what really I look at is when Christ was on the cross and, he forgave the people who put him there. It's like, okay, this was because they didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
And I can objectively look at the behavior of my in-laws and see they're doing all these things, and it appears that they're expecting this certain result. They think that by stalking us and by, sending all these messages and sending all these things after we've asked them not to, somehow in their minds, they think that this is going to draw us back into wanting a relationship with them. Obviously, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes logical sense. If you're doing if A plus B equals C and they're doing A plus B and it equals X, then obviously they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And so when I had that perspective, it's like, okay, I don't have to have these warm, fuzzy feelings.
Right.
Because they're false. If I were, I can just make a decision.
Yeah.
To forgive them.
Yeah. And there's two things from what you said there come to mind. Is one, like that choice of choosing to forgive, putting it in terms, is it's somewhat like, when your husband does something that just like ticks you off, and it's like, okay, well, now I need to go make him dinner. And so maybe you're sitting there with the mixing bowl and you're just like mixing stuff. You're mashing your mashed potatoes angrily. Like that is, I would say that is like an imperfect contrition, and imperfect contrition is enough contrition. You know what I mean? That is maybe imperfect love, but imperfect love is okay. Imperfect forgiveness is okay. Yeah, it would be great if you would just go, you know what, I forgive you. And then it was like the heavens opened and doves flew around and you just felt amazing all the time forever after. That would be awesome. And hopefully you get to that point, but it's not going to happen all the time, and it's not going to happen the first time. And I don't know, maybe it just never will. And maybe that's because it's so unnatural to be going through what people go through when we're in these situations. The Lord knows. Discern that with him. But the other factor to this is Augustine actually wrote a long time ago about cultures and mixing of cultures, right? And, we may all be Americans or Italians or wherever we're from, but there is a family culture. And whether it's passed down from, people before us, or whether it's just something that we've fostered in our own home, there are family cultures. And the culture of your family and the culture of your spouse's family may be different. And when Augustine was writing this, he was talking about mixing cultures, like, one person is from this part of the country and then this person is from a separate country, right? Or just a separate part of the same country. And because cultures could be so very, very different, because travel was so limited back then, what he said was, ideally mix your cultures. That's good. Get along, love everyone. The church is universal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you can't mix your cultures, then it's better to be separate. So if you are discerning marriage with somebody and your family is very tight-knit and you want to spend a lot of time together, And then his family is not that way. And they don't want to spend a lot of time together. And to be honest, I don't want to spend a lot of time with your family if we get married. So that's what you're looking at. If that's going to cause friction and fireworks in the worst way for you, then that's how you discern, you know what, this marriage is just not for me and we're going to break up and I'm going to find somebody who's more happy with my family culture. But if that same person can go, you know what, I find it weird, I find it uncomfortable, I get a little touched out, I go take a time out in the bathroom, but I'm really down to spend time with your family and I love that and we can get along, as long as you can also accept that my family doesn't want to do that and it doesn't mean they don't love you. And you go, yeah, that's cool with me, more time with my family, you know, then great, mix, that's wonderful. But what's going to happen is just because you and your spouse say those things together, that does not mean that the in-laws will also perfectly feel that way. And so you can choose the level of cultural mixing that happens there. And this is a precedent that is 1,500 years old, you know, like he lived forever ago. This is not a new thought, but it's true and wise to say, hey, people have different cultures, different expectations, and there's only a certain level of mixing because honestly, both parties have to agree to what's happening. And ideally, both parties do agree in the spirit of the universal church to get along and to just appreciate each other's culture, even if it's different, and live in harmony. But not everybody's going to do that. Some people are just not that developed spiritually yet. Some people just straight up don't want to be. And there's nothing you can do. You know, what can I do about me? I can say yes to this marriage, no to this in-law, what have you.
Yeah. And boy, not being Catholic when we got married, we missed out on on a lot of things. And I think if somebody had said, hey, if you need to not just, you are marrying just your spouse, but there is that family culture and they do have a lot of influence on your life, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
And then whether you allow it or not is obviously a choice. But yeah, that's with children who are in that stage of marriage, I'll need to come up with a gentle way to bring that up without being like know-it-all mom. But it is important to realize those things because they do, even if there's nothing wrong, that still can cause tension. And it's just being married is hard.
Yeah, honestly, and that sigh says so much because there can be a level
hard
too, like where you have an in-law maybe that you're just like, yeah, when you're dealing with them. But then you also have to acknowledge, you know what, but they're trying, or you know what, but at least in this sense, they're great. Maybe I would not ever ask my in-law for marriage advice, but I would absolutely ask my in-law for studying advice because you know what? They got their PhD and they had really good grades. And even if I'm just like, please don't ever try to advise me on my marriage because just don't waste our time, both of us. You obviously don't know what you're talking about and I'm not going to listen to it, but I can at least acknowledge, hey, in this section, even if it's very small, I can respect what you have to say and I can see the good and the value and, uplift you where you deserve that and pray for you where you need that. It's okay to acknowledge that, people older than you, if it's, the parent-child dynamic or just in your family or whatever, to say, I might find you annoying on so many levels, but I can at least respect you on this level. And so, let's focus on that. Let's connect on that. Let me humble myself to hear what you have to say on that, because objectively, I do know that you know a little bit better than I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody is good at something. And it's sometimes hard to swallow that when when their annoyances are just so glaring. But yeah. So even after a woman decides to create some distance, there's often this lingering resentment, not just towards her in-laws, but towards the situation itself. The life that she thought she would have, the family holidays that are never going to happen, the grandmother relationship that her kids are not going to experience. How would you help a wife who is working through this deal with that grief and resentment so that it doesn't poison this peace that she needs?
So I like to take a lot of things back to the pre-fallen world. And I go, how did God originally intend this thing or this relationship or this dynamic? And originally God intended for us to have peace. then the world fell, people are broken, unnatural things happen. And so a lack of peace is actually an unnatural experience. And that's why the church emphasizes so much that we need to seek and pursue peace and to have peace and to protect our peace. And it's everything, right? It's just like death. The separation of body and soul is unnatural. And going through that unnatural experience causes us pain and grief. So it's okay to experience this lack of peace and to feel a sense of pain and grief and to sort of mourn the consequences, right, of this fallen, broken world. That said, having your feelings be hurt is normal and okay, but dwelling and festering on them is not. That is, one, how you just breed more resentment, and two, you have your focus on the wrong things. If you are going to put your mind somewhere dark, it's not much better than listening to absolutely disgusting music or watching really gross, inappropriate shows or movies or whatever. I mean, everybody can discern what their level is. Some people have a really good filter for stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, you may have just flashed some really inappropriate nudity at me in this show, but that doesn't bother me. The next person may be actually very bothered by that. And it's important for you to know yourself and acknowledge where you're at and where your spouse is at, because you're both walking through this together, and being the help that each other needs, and also just providing for yourself whatever it is that you need, and making sure that you're not flooding your brain with things that are actually not good. And choosing to dwell on the hurt and the pain and whatever is actually not good. It'll make you sad, it'll make you depressed. You won't be as attentive to your spouse or your children, and it's just not good. So you have to let those things go. And it comes back to that, what can I do about me factor. You can't control your in-laws. You can't make them be sorry. You can't make them be less frustrating or whatever it is, but you can choose to community build and do better for yourself. You can choose to have a community of friends or more extended family, cousins, siblings, whatever, and kind of help fill those gaps with those people as much as possible. And then also just do better yourself. Just because your in-laws are this way does not mean that you need to be this type of in-law. So while your children may be like, yeah, I never really got doted on as a grandma, you can choose to be the doting grandma for their kids, show up for their kids, God willing that they have them, be the babysitter, be the, I'll buy the expensive thing on the registry, like whatever it is, however you show up to support them, and do the things that you didn't get and be the things that, they didn't get to experience in their own dynamic within your household with their extended family. And also maintaining a sense of hope, to counterbalance that feeling of despair or sadness. One, focusing on hope and prioritizing your peace is just a better mindset to have. It may seem impossible, and you may go, yeah, I know, I know that they're just not going to change. Like, objectively, rationally thinking, it's going to take a miracle, but hey, miracles happen all the time. That's why we pray for them, and that's why we keep hope for them. It's just better for even if it's only for us, it's better for our mindset to stay that way and to acknowledge objectively, this stuff gets easier with time. It's a new normal. You didn't expect this, you didn't plan on this or anticipate. It's a period of upheaval in your life, but the sooner you figure out your new rhythm and you get into that new space where you go, this is just how things are and I accept it even if I don't like it, and I'm going to maintain like a positive disposition and hope for myself, the better off everybody in the situation is.
Yeah. And from the very beginning, like I'm looking back at like 2008, 2009, when, we really started to experience like the physical symptoms of the stress of being around my in-laws. Like my husband he developed stress-induced alopecia, where he was losing like chunks of hair in the back of his head. And my thyroid just went, but even in the midst of all of that, we took time to take a step back and say, okay, this really stinks. This is awful. This is hard. But we are learning ways to not be for our children when they get to this point.
Yep.
We are taking notes. We are learning how to love unconditionally, which I don't know that we really understood before that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was already 12 years into our marriage. And we knew how to love our kids, but not necessarily to the level that we do now with the unconditional nature of it because of seeing what conditional love looks like. So, and then this platform that God has, given me to be able to share and offer some hope and offer some encouragement. You don't have to have audiences like we do to be able to find other women who need a little bit of help, or to be that doting grandmother if you're of that age, or be that, helpful sister who you don't have now because of the strained relationship with your in-laws, and to step into different relationships where there's a gap.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am looking forward to those times when I can be the mother-in-law that I did not have. Will I fail? I'm sure it will. I'm just probably fail a whole lot.
Yeah.
But to know that God can use all of these things to grow us in ways that we never would have before, is very comforting. So it's one thing that I think Catholicism does really well. Catholicism does a lot of things very well.
Right, yeah.
But this idea of joining our suffering to the suffering of Christ was foreign to me as a Protestant. It was like, if you're suffering, a lot of times it meant that you were doing something wrong and God was punishing with you.
Yeah.
So to walk into this Catholic faith, they're like, no, God is using your suffering to turn you into a saint, to get you to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, this is so much more encouraging and bringing that hope
Mm-hmm.
that we so desperately need in these times when life is just so hard and things feel so dark. And I like that you talk about, again, and it has come back a lot, is that we cannot nurture these feelings, these things that pull us away from God, because what'll that do? That'll pull us away from God.
Yeah.
And he's the only one that can help us. And he's the best help for us. And so I appreciate you, just reiterating that, because we need to hear it. We need to know that when we nurture these feelings of grief,
Mm-hmm.
what does it do? It breeds more grief.
Yeah. I think one thing that Catholics often know, but they don't necessarily live, which this is to go back to my apostolate, Uncatechized Catholic. It's not just apologetics. It's not just teaching the faith, but it is integrating it, synthesizing it so that you can live it and experience it. It's like, I hear this actually a lot from Catholics where they're like, Protestants always talk about having a personal relationship with Jesus. And as a Catholic, I just don't really feel that. It's like, yeah, that's a point of growth for you. Protestants are really good at having a personal relationship with Jesus because as lovingly as possible, there's just so little else for them to go on if they don't cultivate a personal relationship with Jesus. They just have a book that dictates morality to them, and they're not even fully sure they understand the book. So have to cultivate that relationship. It's not enough to know what the church teaches on something. You actually have to know how to integrate it. There's a huge difference between bashing somebody over the head with the faith and knowing what it is and letting it change you and mold you in how you approach people and things. And that's the beginnings, honestly, of a relationship, a personal relationship with Jesus. So God can use our suffering. And when we integrate this knowledge, like we know God can use our suffering for the betterment of us. But then when we're actually called to suffer, we're like, oh, this stinks, da, 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 da. But you can actually suffer well and suffer in peace. And that's how you suffer like a saint. When you stop viewing suffering as this painful experience where it's like, yeah, I know, life is suffering and I'm going to go through whatever. And like, yeah, I know that eventually this will be used for good and it's not wasted, whatever. Instead of looking at it like that, try looking at suffering as a mercy, whether it's your own suffering or witnessing somebody else suffering. If you've ever witnessed somebody in hospice, you know what I'm talking about. Instead of despairing at their suffering or not being sure how to support them as they go through their suffering, viewing it as a mercy and going, you know what? This is going to do a wealth of good for them in the afterlife. Or maybe they lived a really good life. This is paying dividends for somebody else who needs it, who couldn't suffer themselves. Or for me, all the time, I know we all have gone through something where we go, that sucked. But also, I don't know how I would have learned. Da, 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 da. It is suffering is the purification by fire. It's like I got my degree in theology, not because there was some amount of knowledge that's just secret and kept behind the doors of the collegiate institutions of the world, but because it's growth of knowledge on fast forward. Okay. Therapy is personal growth on fast forward. Like you can learn things yourself, you can grow yourself, whatever. But if you want to speed things along, there are certain paths and certain ways of doing it. Education is one, therapy is one, and suffering is one. And so when you look at suffering as going, okay, this is turning me into a saint much faster. This is the pressure that makes diamonds. You're going to suffer better. You're going to help others suffer better. And it's going, honestly, in a, what's the word? Not hypocritical way, but in a, some kind of, I'm blanking on the word, but in a way that seems backwards or inside out, it actually does make your suffering better and lighter because you're not going to cry as much. You're going to go, yeah, this is not fun. But I trust the Lord and I trust that there's something in this, even if I don't see it right now, or maybe I do see it right now and I'm like, okay, Lord, I get it already. But there's some element of just carrying on and going through it and offering it up and going, I get where I'm at already, but just because I get it, that doesn't mean that this is over. So I am going to offer it up. I'm going to suffer through it without complaint. I am going to whatever, right? These things are so useful, and integrating it into your life and living it for yourself is better for you and is how you become a saint. And it is truly like that self-mastery and moving yourself back toward that which God had originally intended and originally planned. I mean, nothing's ever going to be perfect this side of the veil, but you can get very, very close. And when you get very, very close, you are living like a saint.
Would childbirth be a good comparison? Like, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard, and it's oftentimes not how you expected, and sometimes it's way longer, but you have your focus on the goal, and it's that baby in your arms at the end.
Yeah. And I know you can suffer through childbirth very well, or you can suffer through it very miserably. It doesn't change that the end goal is baby. So I think looking at it like that, where you can go, I can scream and I can moan and I can, be angry and be stressed. And honestly, that probably works against the end goal of having a baby. Or I can just give in and let the pains come and roll with these contractions, roll with the punches, that sort of thing. I'm still going to get to the end goal of having a baby. It's going to be a lot better for me and probably everybody involved.
Yeah. If we try to cultivate some peace in the middle of those contractions.
Exactly.
Well, Desirae, thank you so much for spending all this time with us today. And, if you're listening, please, I would appreciate for you to rate and review this podcast, whether it's on Apple or YouTube or Spotify or wherever. Your ratings and your reviews helps other women find this content. And so I highly encourage you to do that before you swipe away on this app. And then if you would like to find a community of women who really understand this very, very difficult path that we're on, I want to invite you to join us in this Catholic community with wives who have toxic in-laws at toxicinlaws.com. There is a free community there just waiting for you to pray for you and to support you. Desirae, again, thank you so much. Can you just share with the listeners and the watchers, viewers, where they can connect with you and find out more about what you are doing?
Absolutely. So I do have a website for my apostolate. It's uncatechizedcatholic.com. And then if you want to learn more about your faith and focus on synthesizing it, follow Uncatechized Catholic basically everywhere. And you follow me, Desirae Sifuentes, basically everywhere. The Uncatechized Catholic stuff is a lot more polished and mission oriented, if you will. Whereas I'm just me. I just do what I do and I post what I post, and I don't care about what the algorithm says. Sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's more synthesizing of the faith, but that's where you can find me on just about any platform. Keep an eye out. The Uncatechized Catholic live stream will be coming soon, and I intend to do that basically everywhere. I think I can stream to up to 5 places at one time. So like
Wow.
TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, I think is one of the places that we're looking at. Just all that coming soon. And then I just created a Substack. So if you're a Substack person, then I will be there and you'll be able to get different depths of what I have to say in each of these spaces. Obviously, with something like Instagram or TikTok, it's like these little tiny, barely nuanced, bite-sized pieces of things. And Substack, I can get much deeper into it, and live streaming and YouTubing get much deeper still, because I have just so much more time and more ability to keep people's attention that way. So those are where you'll find me and everything that I'm doing, both apostolate-oriented and just for myself.
And thank you so much for taking your wisdom, not only sharing it here today, but to reach those of us who want to learn how to use our faith. I mean, we're Catholic for a reason, so we need to learn. Need to learn how to live it and apply it, and then share it with others. So I'm so grateful for you sharing your wisdom here today, and I look forward to hopefully chatting again soon.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I really, really loved this conversation.
Thank you so much. All right. Take care.
You too.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode today. I hope you got so much out of it and feel encouraged, but maybe you're still feeling a little bit isolated and alone. And if that's the case, I'd like to invite you to join me in the Catholic Wives Plus Toxic In-Laws community. This is a safe space for you to feel validated, to feel seen, to feel heard. And it's just a place for fellow Catholic wives to connect with other women who really understand exactly what you're going through. So consider this your official invitation to join us simply by going to toxicinlaws.com and signing up for the community. The community aspect is completely free, but there is a paid option to upgrade if you'd like further training on our monthly themes. So far, we've covered boundaries, we've covered legal protection, we've covered handling the holidays, and we have a new theme every month that is specifically designed to not only help you with these difficult relationships, but to draw you closer to the Lord. So please join us. Go to toxicinlaws.com, sign up for the community, and I'll see you on the inside. Disclaimer. All content and information on this podcast and our website, including our programs, products, and/or services, is for information and educational purposes only and does not constitute professional medical, psychiatric, or mental health advice of any kind, and does not establish any kind of professional client relationship by your listening to this podcast or use of my website. A professional client relationship with you is only formed after we have expressly entered into a written agreement with you that you have signed, including our fee structure and other terms to work with you in a specific matter. Although we strive to provide accurate general information, the information presented here is not a substitute for any kind of professional advice, and you should not rely solely on this information. Always consult a professional in the area for your particular needs and circumstances prior to making any professional, medical, or mental health related decisions.